What the hell is the Prime Minister going on?
Well, I think we've got big questions that we need answered by him
should he
and his
resign?
Chief of Staff.
But hang on a minute, let's put it a different way. If the Prime Minister has lied to the Commons, do you agree that's a resignation event?
Yes.
Therefore...
What unfolded was nothing short of a political circus, insults flying, interruptions non-stop, and one brutal exchange that left Nigel Farage staring down an American congressman who seemed less interested in truth and more obsessed with humiliating him. But here's the twist. Instead of crumbling, Farage turned the tables in a way nobody saw coming. Free speech! They all say they believe in it. Every politician loves to brag about defending it. But the second the cameras are rolling and the lights are blazing in Congress, something strange happens. They forget what free speech actually means. And on this day, Nigel Farage found himself right at the centre of America's hypocrisy. From the moment he sat down, you could feel the tension in the room. He wasn't being welcomed as a guest. He was being lined up like a target. The congressman smirked as he began, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Mr. Farage, welcome to the United States. This isn't your first time here, correct? It seemed like an innocent question, but the tone said it all. It wasn't curiosity, it was a trap being set. The questions piled up fast. Why was Farage at Trump's rallies? Why did he attend the Republican convention? Why was he endorsing a man the American establishment despises? Every single word was framed as if Farage's presence in the United States was some kind of crime. The congressman wasn't interested in answers, he was interested in theatre and the audience. The tech elites, the cameras, the politicians, desperate to score a viral moment. Then came the real dagger, because you're getting ready to run for Prime Minister of Great Britain, correct? And you'll need Elon Musk's money to do it. The words landed like a bomb. There it was, the accusation that Farage wasn't really in America to talk about free speech at all, but to beg billionaires for cash. A smear designed to humiliate him in front of the world. Farage fired back, calm at first. I had a very public falling out with Elon Musk. He insults me virtually every week, but the congressman wasn't having it. He doubled down. Oh, but you never stop trying to ingratiate yourself with him, do you? You need Musk's money, don't you? This wasn't a question. It was an accusation, dressed up as one. And here's where it all started to unravel. The congressman wasn't letting him finish. Every time Farage opened his mouth, he was cut off. Every sentence was twisted. Every attempt to explain was drowned out. It was less of a hearing and more of a roast. But instead of being embarrassed, Farage grew sharper. His tone hardened. His words cut deeper. What about Mark Zuckerberg? He shot back. How much did he give Democrats? Why is that never questioned? The congressman squirmed but kept pressing. He wanted one thing, as he tried to force Nigel Farage to admit he was chasing Elon Musk's money, but Farage refused to play his game. And then the line that stopped the room cold. If we believe in free speech, we live with it. No spin. No excuses. Just a blunt reminder that freedom isn't about protecting words we like. It's about tolerating the ones we hate. The congressman sneered, but the cameras caught it all. Who looked rattled now? Because let's be clear, this wasn't really about Elon Musk or Trump rallies or who sat where in Milwaukee. This was about exposing Nigel Farage as a fraud. It was about dragging him through the mud to score political points. But the congressman made one fatal mistake. He underestimated how quickly Farage can turn an ambush into an opportunity. The insults were flying, the interruptions were non-stop, but every cut-off only made Farage look calmer, stronger, more in control. The congressman thought he was landing blows, but he was actually giving Farage the stage. And Farage, whether you love him or hate him, knows exactly what to do when the spotlight is on. So ask yourself this, was this really a clash about free speech? Or was it a carefully staged attempt to silence a man who refuses to be silenced? And if this was the congressman's plan to humiliate him, why did it feel like he was the one being exposed instead? The trap had been set, But the hunter was about to become the hunted. The congressman thought he could paint Nigel Farage as a desperate politician, grovelling for billionaire handouts, but what he didn't expect was how quickly the narrative would turn against him. Because when you spend all your energy trying to shut someone down, the one thing you reveal is fear. And in this chamber, the fear was written all over his face. Farage leaned forward, his tone still controlled, but laced with steel. "I've been coming to this country since 1982, he reminded them. "I've worked with American companies, I've spoken at your events, I've supported your allies." But instead of engaging with his point, the congressman cut him off again. "Yes, but you only have 4 seats in your parliament, don't you? You're the leader of a fringe party." There it was. The insult that was supposed to crush him. Fringe, irrelevant, a nobody. But here's the irony. If Nigel Farage was truly irrelevant, why were America's lawmakers so desperate to grill him on live television? Why invite him to Congress only to try and tear him down? You don't waste that kind of energy on someone who doesn't matter. And Farage saw the weakness instantly. He smirked, leaned back and let the insult hang in the air. Then, with perfect timing, he fired. "Everything I've ever done has been as a fringe figure. And yet here I am in front of you. If I'm irrelevant, why are you so obsessed with me?" The chamber shifted. The congressman's smile faltered. Suddenly the punchline wasn't working anymore. But the interruptions kept coming. Tariffs, trade sanctions, tech companies. Every accusation thrown at Farage was designed to confuse and overwhelm him. "You want British citizens to pay tariffs to protect American tech companies, don't you?" the congressman barked. It was a lie, but he said it with such confidence that casual listeners might have believed it. Farage didn't flinch. "That's a falsehood put out by the British Prime Minister today," he said firmly. "I've never suggested sanctions in any way. What I've made very clear is that the Online Safety Act is a danger to trade between our countries. Allies should have honest conversations." That's all, and yet he wasn't allowed to finish. Time and again, his microphone was cut, his words drowned out. The congressman, red-faced and restless, seemed less like a defender of democracy and more like a schoolyard bully, desperate to score cheap laughs. At one point, Farage was even forced to snap, "Can I get a cup of coffee or something? We've been here a long time." The sarcasm was cutting, and the audience ate it up. Because let's be real, this wasn't a hearing, it was a spectacle. The congressman wanted a viral clip where he looked like the righteous hero standing up to the British troublemaker. But the opposite was happening. Every time he tried to shut Farage down, it made him look insecure. Every time he refused to let him answer, it exposed his weakness. And every time he pressed the Elon Musk question, it made him look obsessed with one man's wallet instead of actual policy. Farage's critics will say he was dodging, deflecting, avoiding the truth. But take a closer look. What he was really doing was flipping the script. Instead of letting the congressman define him as a fringe leader begging billionaires for cash, he defined himself as the man calling out hypocrisy, the man reminding America of its own free speech failures. And that's where the real danger was for the establishment. Because here's the question no one in that room wanted to answer. Why is Congress so threatened by Nigel Farage? Why does a man who supposedly has only 4 seats in British politics command this much attention in Washington? Could it be because his message, raw, controversial, unfiltered, exposes the cracks in their carefully polished image of democracy? The congressman thought he could humiliate him with interruptions, insults, and cheap shots. But humiliation is a tricky game. Sometimes it backfires. Sometimes the audience sees through it. And on this day, the cracks in the performance were beginning to show. But just when it seemed like the congressman had run out of tricks, he went for one last desperate gamble. A line so blunt, so outrageous, it nearly silenced the entire chamber. What he said next made jaws drop and cameras zoom in, because it wasn't just an attack on Nigel Farage. It was an attack on the very idea of free speech itself. And then it happened. The congressman leaned in, eyes narrowing, voice dripping with contempt, and spat out the line that made even his own colleagues shift uncomfortably in their seats. "Let's be honest here, Ms. Farage. You don't care about free speech. You care about power. You care about money. And you'll say whatever you need to say to get it. The words hit the chamber like a gunshot. For a moment, there was silence. Even the constant interruptions paused. Everyone knew what had just been said wasn't just another jab at Nigel Farage. It was a direct accusation that free speech itself was nothing more than a cover story, that Farage's entire defence of liberty was a fraud. And in politics, there are few insults harsher than being called a liar in front of the world. Farage's jaw tightened. You could see the shift in his eyes. This wasn't about Elon Musk anymore, or Trump rallies, or fringe parties. This was personal. This was an attack on his credibility, on his legacy, on everything he had built his political life around. He let the silence stretch for a few seconds. Just long enough for the congressman to believe he had landed the knockout blow. And then, with the kind of timing only a seasoned debater could pull off, Farage spoke. His voice was sharp, deliberate, and impossible to interrupt. If I cared about money, I'd have joined the establishment years ago. If I cared about power, I'd have bent the knee to Brussels. If I cared about popularity, I wouldn't be here at all. I care about one thing, telling people the truth, whether they like it or not. And that, Congressman, is something you and many of your colleagues have forgotten. The room shifted. Suddenly, it wasn't Farage who looked cornered. It was the Congressman. His smirk vanished. His papers rustled nervously. He tried to interject, but this time the chairman waved him off. For once, Farage was being allowed to speak. And when he did, he didn't hold back. He ripped into the hypocrisy of American lawmakers, claiming to defend free speech while trying to muzzle dissenting voices. He mocked the obsession with Elon Musk, pointing out how politicians conveniently ignore the billions funneled into campaigns by their own tech allies. He called out the interruptions for what they were, cheap stunts designed to score applause from a crowd that wasn't even there. And then the gut punch. You want to lecture me about being a fringe politician? Well, let me tell you this. Fringe voices are the ones who change history. It was fringe voices who stood up to tyranny. Fringe voices who challenged the establishment. Fringe voices who gave ordinary people a voice when the so-called mainstream wouldn't. If you think I'm fringe, fine, but history belongs to the fringe, not to cowards hiding behind procedure. The congressman shifted in his chair, clearly rattled. What was supposed to be an ambush had turned into a lecture, and not the kind he wanted to hear. He tried to laugh it off, muttering something about grandstanding, but the damage was already done. The cameras had captured it all. Farage, calm and composed, dismantling the narrative piece by piece while the congressman squirmed. And yet the battle wasn't over. Farage had regained control, but the congressman wasn't done throwing punches. In a last attempt to claw back the spotlight, he threw out one more question, one more jab meant to drag Farage back down. If you truly believe in free speech, then why do you align yourself with people who spread lies, who traffic in misinformation, who poison democracy with their rhetoric? It was a loaded question, the kind designed not for an answer, but for a headline. It was an accusation so broad, so sweeping, it was impossible to fully refute without playing into the trap. And yet Farage, without missing a beat, leaned forward, smiled, and delivered a line so sharp it sliced right through the tension. Because free speech, Congressman, isn't about protecting voices you like. It's about protecting the ones you hate. And the day you forget that, you no longer live in a democracy, but you live in a dictatorship of the approved opinion. Which one do you want America to be? The chamber froze. That was the moment. The congressman had been outmaneuvered, outperformed, and publicly exposed. But the real shock wasn't what Farage had said, but it was what the congressman would do next. Because when politicians are humiliated on camera, they don't back down quietly. They double down, they lash out, they cross lines they can't uncross. The congressman had been cornered, his arguments shredded, his interruptions exposed for the stunts they were. The cameras were still rolling, the audience still watching. And he knew the viral moment he wanted had slipped away, and that's when desperation took over. Instead of pulling back, instead of salvaging his dignity, he lunged forward with words so reckless that the chamber gasped. Mr. Farage, he sneered, you don't deserve this platform. Men like you are a danger to democracy. You shouldn't even be here. Think about that for a second. In a hearing supposedly about defending free speech, a United States congressman had just told a foreign guest that his voice didn't even deserve to be heard. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. The very principle he claimed to defend, the right to speak freely, was being tossed aside in front of the world just to score a political point. Farage didn't flinch. He leaned back in his chair, folded his arms and smiled. The smile of a man who knows he has just won without lifting a finger. Then he delivered the line that sealed the entire exchange. There it is. The mask is off. You don't believe in free speech at all. You believe in speech you approve of. And when someone challenges you, you call it dangerous. That, Congressman, is tyranny dressed up as democracy. The silence was deafening. For once, the interruptions stopped. The Congressman shifted uncomfortably, his face flushed red. He tried to fire back, but the chairman cut him off. The gentleman's time has expired, the gavel struck, and just like that, the battle was over. But the damage was permanent. Because what the cameras captured that day wasn't Nigel Farage begging for billionaire money or dodging tough questions. It was a congressman so desperate to humiliate him that he ended up humiliating himself live on the record for the world to see. It was the mask slipping off the political elite, revealing just how fragile their so-called defence of liberty really is. And here's the bitter irony. Farage didn't need to shout. He didn't need to storm out. He didn't even need to win every point. All he needed to do was stay standing, keep talking, and remind the world that the people screaming the loudest about protecting democracy are often the ones most terrified of real debate. The congressman wanted a headline. He got one, but not the one he expected, because instead of Nigel Farage being exposed as a fraud, it was Congress that was exposed as a stage-managed circus, where free speech is praised in theory but strangled in practice. And the question that lingers long after the gavel came down is the one they never wanted asked. If free speech can be silenced this easily inside the halls of Congress, what chance does it have outside them? And if Nigel Farage can be told to his face that he doesn't even deserve a platform, what does that say about the future of liberty for the rest of us?